Welcome to day 2. I hope you're rested and refreshed for today. Today we'll be having a bunch of sessions that are going to be amazing. So let's begin with the first session. Chude Jideonwo is a host and director of With Chude, a popular talk show and podcast featuring Africa's top celebrities and leaders. He's also the CEO of WithChude.com, a media tech platform focused on African documentaries and films, with his first film, Awaiting Trial, winning major awards. Jideonwo co-founded Red for Africa and Joy Inc., working on national elections and social movements across Africa. He has served on the boards of Microsoft for Africa and the Initiative for Equal Rights. In 2024, he became the first creative in residence at the London School of Economics. Today, Chude will be speaking on building a Pan-African media empire. So grab a note and a pen. Let's get into this session.
Right, good morning. It's great to see, well, I can't see, but great to be here talking to all of you. I have been nervous about doing this because even though public speaking used to be my life, over the past 4 years since doing my show, I've been focused on just listening to people and saying no to all kinds of speaking engagements. And data creators, they're the hardest people to BS, isn't it? So this made me a bit nervous. What I decided to do, therefore, is something I often don't do, which is to share my story. The topic is building a Pan-African media empire. And I thought, even though I'm not sure about that last word, perhaps sharing the story of the humble beginnings that got us here would be more useful than anything else. Yeah, so let's go into it. It's great to thank you to Selar for inviting me to do this, and well done to the rest of the team for the seamless way they've managed the entire process. Now, so I got into the media by accident. I was in secondary school in Ogun State. I had written a book, my first novella, and it had been published by one of the national publishers, but they didn't understand how to do publicity. Now, I was a couch potato. I wanted to be an accountant, but I spent a lot of time watching TV and reading newspapers. And so I knew all the top TV presenters in the country by name, not knew them personally. Knew the top columnists. And when my publisher didn't know how to publicize the book, when I came back from writing my SSCE exams, I decided to start going to TV and radio stations, one after the other, to meet my favorite TV hosts and my favorite newspaper editors and say, look, here's my book. Here's my book. Please, could you, I'd like to talk about my book on your show. Yeah. I didn't know that I was going to have a career in the media. I loved the media, but I didn't even know you could have a job before you had finished in university. Now, I was doing this while waiting to be admitted into the University of Lagos. That's when I was going to meet all these TV presenters. One of them was perhaps the biggest TV presenter in the country in that decade, Livia Dronoma of blessed memory. Many of you don't know him. And he invited me on his show, talked about my book. And in the middle of his presentation, he suddenly speaks to the camera. It was a live show, but there was no audience. So he speaks to the camera and says, I think we should give Chido, that's what he used to call me, a TV show. And then he said, okay, so what do you think, guys? What do you think, guys? So he looked at me and said, okay, Chido, you're now the presenter of the youth segment. That's how I began my career in the media. And I mean, to explain those times will require a textbook because it was a fundamentally different media space. There was, when I started my career in the media, which was in 2000, there was no digital element to it in the country, none at all. Yeah, I didn't even have an email, if I remember correctly. There were no popular websites. Social media was certainly not a thing. None of the TV shows had any digital elements to it. We could not even have conceived of what we now know as digital content space. More than that, I think by the time I started that career, there were just 5 TV stations in the country, certainly not more than 10. And altogether between TV and radio, certainly not up to 15 on a national level. So that's the media space that I entered into. So I got my first job doing that with Livia Jonoma. And then soon after, another person who had interviewed me, Fumi Yonda, she had the leading breakfast show at the time, and she's still my TV mother. She had invited me on her show, had spoken on the show, and a few months later, she asked me to come to a meeting with her. Cut a long story short, at that meeting, she offered me my first behind-the-scenes job as a researcher on the show. So that's how this career fully began in the media. Now, it was in watching Fumi. Fumi, I think, is one of the greatest TV hosts Nigeria has ever seen, till perhaps the greatest, in my opinion. And it was while watching Fumi do her thing on a daily breakfast show, Tejo show, Yaba, that I began to realize what I really wanted to be in the media. I saw her change lives. I saw her make impact. I saw her tell stories that inspired people. And then I realized I wanted to do the same thing. In my sense of what they call vision in the media became clear. And I also realized, I'm moving too fast. Anyway, so I was around 19 when I met my co-founders of what is now Red for Africa. And I'd been inspired by Fumi, and I was doing a number of things in media, and I met these 2 other young people who were very passionate about the same things I was passionate about. We were passionate about using the media to inspire young people, and passionate about using the media to inspire young people, not just in Nigeria, first in Nigeria and ultimately in Africa. That became a very clear vision. And, at the time it was crazy. First, many media platforms were not thinking about Africa in the first place. We were barely even thinking about Nigeria. Youth as a market didn't even exist at the time. Nobody was dealing with youth segments, and nobody knew who we were, what our names were. And we wanted to build these media platforms that would inspire a generation of young people in Nigeria and in Africa. But we were very clear in that vision. So we set aside building a company that we called Red Strat at the time. Now, Red Strat's primary job was to create content. So the first project we launched was what is now known as the Future Awards Africa. But it wasn't the Future Awards Africa at the time, it was simply the Future Awards. And we wanted to celebrate young people who were doing amazing things across Nigeria. We used to say in interviews then that we started that business with 0 naira. And people think it's either metaphor or motivation, but it's neither. We literally did start with 0 naira. That's because we were barely earning enough to take care of our own needs. And we didn't know any models for the business we were building. And so we thought it was very likely to fail. Therefore, it was likely to fail. We didn't think it was fair to ask our parents or our friends, such as we had them, to donate or contribute or invest in this business. Kind of like, how Selar started without any outside investment. But also at the time, there was no venture space. So if you believed in an idea, you had to find friends or family, but we didn't even do that. So what we did was, because I had worked in the media for a few years, we did what we know in the media as barter. So we would say, okay, if you supported the Future Awards with stage or lights or venue, then we'll give you advertising during the show, after the show. And then for the rest of it, we leaned on our friends. So I think our first edition, either the first or second edition, I mix up my dates these days. Had the Ike Osakiduwa as host, had the actor Dakore Akonde as host, and all these people. Daria Atalade, I think, was host one of those first 2 editions. And most people did it for free because we were trying to support our vision. That's how we launched our business. Literally, not metaphorically with zero naira. Because we believed that the thing that we're doing deserved to be in the world and that we could make it happen. The first 4 years, Future was launched, I think, in 2006. And for the first 4 years, we had zero sponsorship. It became popular, but people still didn't believe what we're doing didn't make sense to advertisers, to sponsors. They were used to supporting sports, supporting movies, supporting music. This youth thing didn't make sense to them. Yeah. It wasn't until then our fortunes began to rise slowly. 2010, I think, we got our first sponsorship after 4 years. And that was done 2006, 7, 8, 9 without sponsorship. Yeah, so 2010, we got our first sponsorship. That was also the year when we had Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who is now DJ at the WTO. Then she was managing director at the World Bank, to give the keynote address. And then at that event, she shared data that was also when we got sponsorship on High TV, which was a cable news network at the same time. So it was a big year for us, big year for us. First year that our business was becoming a business. And Iweala shared data from the CIA that over 70% of Nigeria's population was below 13. That was the first time we were hearing that. And that changed the way we're thinking about our work, about how the media could change society. Fast forward a few months later, and our president had gotten missing, the Nigerian president. Yes, that happened. And it was chaos across the country. And I thought, myself and my friends thought, how do we use the media to make our voice heard in this situation and to make some change happen? And I think at the time, Twitter had just been introduced into the global psyche. And so we held what? We held a national protest at the time, called the Enough is Enough Nigeria protest. And our primary tool for mobilization was social media. Yes, mostly Twitter. And this was not our business. This was just something we're doing on the side as young people, but using our experience with the media, but also in line with the vision that we had that the media could change society. And so we did that. I remember the protests. I think that was the first time a Nigerian hashtag trended globally. And suddenly, we're talking to the world, CNN, BBC, all of that. It was the first time I was experiencing such impact at that scale. And I think just seeing all the things that happened that year inspired us to really think, you know what? I think this Africa vision that we've always had, we can execute it. This was 2010. In 2011, the Future Awards was hosted. This idea that 3 young people, when we started this idea, I was 19, my co-founder 18, and my other co-founder, Amelia, was 17. Yeah, so we're literally teenagers, not just young people. And we said, okay, I think we can do the Future Awards. So 2011, I think. We had what was one of the biggest and most exciting Future Awards I've ever been part of. So we had on stage that day, being honored for Young Person of the Year. We had Don Jazzy, we had Genevieve Naji, we had all these stars on the stage. I think Ifeanyi Nebo was on the stage at the time. And after that, we thought, you know what, I think it's time for us to do the bold thing and establish the Future Awards in Africa. And then the next year, the Future Awards was hosted in the presidential villa to celebrate 100 years of Nigerian nationhood. And after that, we were ready. By the next year, 2012, I think, I mix up my dates these days because I'm now old. 2012, we launched The Future Was Africa. I think that was the edition that Bonang Mateba hosted from South Africa. And from this idea that three teenagers founded while I was still in university, and my other two co-founders had not even entered university at the time, was reaching 12 to 14 countries in the continent. And, I remember sitting when the presidential villa, where the state banquet hall, a private event being hosted by the president. I looked into the hall and I remember thinking to myself, and this is not a cliche, like, man, no more, anything is possible in this life. I want to fast forward from that. Because, my show with Chude was founded in 2020 during COVID. And by that time, I'd been away from the media space for a few years. I was dealing with my own stories, my own issues. And when I launched the show, a lot of assumptions in the media had changed. Things had radically changed. I felt like a stranger in the media space. Obviously, the space had become almost firmly digital. And a lot of assumptions had happened. People would tell you couldn't launch a brand without paying influencers. You had to do digital marketing. You had to do collaborations. You had to do a particular idea. Nigerians only wanted gossip. Nigerians only wanted entertainment. All these assumptions. But I launched something completely different from anything anybody was doing at the time, because I recollected that at the time I was 19. And I did something that was so crazy that nobody else was doing at the time, along with my co-founders. And we took that idea from literally nothing to eventually 24 countries of Africa. And we didn't just do that. I resigned as CEO of Red for Africa in, I think, 2016. And we've had our first non-founder CEO. This would be, I think, our third year of Ayodeji being the CEO of Red. And this year, The Future was going to be hosted from 4 African countries. I think that's what they're going to do. And again, I learned that vision that we had when we were not, when we were just teenagers, that it could change the world. It could make us money and it could make impact. And so when I came into the media space and people were telling me all of these things, I knew not to take them seriously, because my own career in this media had taught me important lessons. And these were the lessons that it had taught me. That there is nothing more powerful than an idea. I know we say that a lot. That's why I told my story first, because we've heard that a lot. But truly, that's what it is. So there's nothing more important than an idea. There's nothing more important than identifying a skill, the thing that you do better than most people. And then doing it. And then doing it consistently, no matter what anybody else is doing. No matter what is trending at the point in time. No matter whether it's succeeding or failing at that point in time. It runs against most of what people are taught. It runs against what I was told when I started with Chude. So when I started with Chude, I wanted to run it as an experiment. It's a digital experiment. I'm like, okay, so maybe I'm old school, even though I was barely in my early 30s. But let me try what I know, that these principles are universal, whether it's traditional, whether it's digital, whether it's web, whether it's social. Let me try what I know. What I know is do the thing that you most believe in. The thing that you do better than most people, which is in this case, interviewing. Do it as best as you can. Do it no matter what anybody else is doing or saying. Do it no matter whether people understand it or sponsor it or it makes money in the interim. And there's nothing wrong with making money in the interim. There's nothing wrong with succeeding when you start. I've watched one of our top digital creators who was a mentee of mine succeed this quickly. So suffering is not essential to this whole thing. But whether it succeeds immediately or doesn't succeed immediately, whether it fails at first or doesn't fail at first, if you deeply believe in it and you are good at it, or you can be good at it, then stick with it. And so when we launched The Future I refused to do any digital marketing for it. I refused to do any ad. First and foremost, we didn't even plan it to be a digital product. It was launched on TVC, which is a linear TV station. We got into digital space by accident. Literally, somebody posted our show on Instagram, and so I thought to myself, wait, you can post cuts on Instagram. Or, people kept telling me to go on YouTube, and I thought, I don't think this show's going to do well on YouTube. I don't think Nigerians are going to watch this show. I was basically drag kicking and screaming to put this show on YouTube. But I said, we're not going to spend any money on digital advertising. I want to know that this idea succeeds on its own by itself. And I believe that if it is good, then it's going to succeed, even if it takes a while. And it did take us a year before our shows began to go on YouTube. It took us a year before we began to go viral on social media. People are often surprised when I tell them that we've never paid for a post on any social media platform at any time. Never paid an influencer, never paid for a collaboration, never done any of those things. And again, there's nothing wrong with those things. Nothing wrong with doing whatever you want to do to make your business grow. But the point is that many of the things you are told you must do to succeed are not true. Many of the things you are told that other people are doing to succeed are not true. People say to you that, oh, things have changed because it's the digital media space now. Most times they don't know what they're talking about. Whether it's digital, whether it's media, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's YouTube, if it's web, and I remind people that there are a lot of web-based platforms. Why people tell you things like, people are no longer reading web-based platforms. A number of web-based platforms are doing incredibly well. People tell you, people only have time for short content. Incredibly long-form content is doing well. And one of the most viral content recently was over 3 hours, an interview with a pastor on social media, and it got over 1 million views. So many of those assumptions that people tell you are not true. I learned that very early in my career. And even after I'd spent over a decade in the media space, and I was launching a completely new brand, and the mass audience didn't know who I was, those same principles applied. Those same principles applied. And it comes down to those, what are those principles? Very simple. And it really is that simple. What do you do better than anybody else? What is the skill? What is the talent? Even if it's an African vision. If you remember, we didn't even start by having an African vision. We started by having a Nigerian vision. But what we did was get busy doing what we wanted to do. Get busy doing what we said we were going to do. Get busy creating the content, which wasn't called content then, but get busy creating the event, the print, the TV content that we said we were going to do. And you see, let me take a segue from my story. I have been in this industry for a while. Next year, I'll be making a big announcement. And I have seen brands, I've seen celebrities rise and fall. I've seen trends stand and die. I've seen superstars fade. I have seen products and brands die. I've seen Blockbuster fail. I've seen people celebrated by global press kill over and collapse. And I've seen the people that have succeeded over time. They are people who started things not because other people were doing them, but because they deeply believed in them. One of my friend, Uche Pedro, who runs Bella Niger, which is still one of the biggest web and online-based platforms across the continent, and has been so for over a decade. Then he began to do fashion and weddings digitally because it was popular. Literally, nobody was doing this at the time. And in the time that Bella Niger has existed, there has been fierce competition on all corners. But if you wanted to launch an upscale fashion or wedding, well, so people do wedding. I mean, weddings are now big brands now. Today, there's no other option to go by Bella Niger. And what Bella Niger did was they never wavered when trends were changing. They believed in their core, that this is what we do better than anybody else. And they've evolved that into events, they've evolved that into video, they've evolved that into, they've gone across the continent while still being called Bella Niger. And they've literally transformed the way that we consume wedding, fashion, and style content. My friend Debuka has been hosting Robbie Minds for over 10 years, yeah? And I tell people that Debuka is beyond seasons because, we created Rubber Minds over 15 years ago, myself and my co-founders. And so after 5 years, we're looking around and we're thinking, who is the best person to host this show? And we thought, and Opiko had never hosted a show at that time, if I'm correct, I'm not sure. He'd never hosted a show, I'd never hosted a news show at the time. And as he said after, he was, in quotes, jobless at the time. But you could see that Ebuka was passionate about interpreting the news in the mainstream media. He was passionate about influencing culture. He was passionate about using the media to simplify complex subjects. You know, he's still the one TV presenter known for, you can see him hosting a governor one day, and the next day you can see him, you know, gossiping on Big Brother. And no matter what has happened in his life, no matter if he's hosting, you know, he's interviewing Bill Gates, or he's hosting Big Brother, or he's doing whatever show he's doing, wherever he is in the world, he returns to host Rubber Minds because he's deeply, truly passionate about that. He's not doing it because it's trendy, he's not doing it, you know. And so a person like that, a brand like that, will survive across ages. There's so many examples of that. You know, recently, Mr. Macaroni called Don Jazzy perhaps the biggest influencer on the continent. And it didn't happen. Don Jazzy will always be relevant in any age because the passion didn't come because it was trending today. It's the same thing. How do I create things, whether it's music, whether it's content, whether it's, that just makes people happy. Now, if you have fidelity to that, no matter what the platform is, because trends will change. You know, it looks like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube are the all in all. But if you've lived long enough, you know that things that are hot today may not be hot in 5 years, in 10 years. But if you have a thing you deeply believe in and you do better than anybody else, no matter what is hot or not in the moment, you will find a path to success. You will find a path to growth, and you will find a path to remain relevant. It really is that simple, but it's not easy. It's not easy to stick with what you do best when people are trying other things. It's not easy to stick with what you know you should do when other people are trying other new things. You know, so people will tell you, try comedy, try tech, try do giveaway, do this, break a world record. People will tell you to try everything. And the velocity of the distractions these days is so much. I feel so much compassion for a young person who is coming out at this day and age. There's so much temptation not to stick with one thing, or not to stick with a few things. So much temptation to keep changing things. So much. But the principles have not changed. YouTube, you know, one of the people I love listening to is Jeff Bezos, and he says, do not focus, if you want to build success, don't focus on the things that change. Focus on the things that don't change. No matter the platform, he says, delighting customers will never change. You know, giving people the cheapest options on any product will never go out of fashion, no matter what the platform is. No matter if it's AI, no matter if it's web-based, no matter if it's, you know, social media-based. So you have to ask yourself, what's the thing I truly believe? What's the thing I really want to do? What's the thing I really do better than anybody else? And am I ready to commit to it, even in the interim, even if it's not making money in the interim? And again, there's nothing wrong with making money in the interim if you can. Even if the trends leave me for a bit, even if people don't understand what I'm trying to do, even if people think I'm crazy, even if the vision is so big, people think I'm mad, even if I'm the minority, even if it sounds, feels, looks strange to other people, is that what you want to do? Um, and when you even look at the data in the world, if you really spend time observing what a lot of things that succeed, we realize that this is just common sense. Like on YouTube, any kind of content succeeds. People do 15-minute content, people do 3 hours content. I've seen a man talk to his car for 3 hours on YouTube. But if the content is so good and the person does it with such deep conviction and excellence, I've seen the audience come. I've seen the audience come. And that has made me unafraid to do crazy things, even till now. My history and the way that I built Red Media, Stagecraft has worked in national elections in over 7 countries, 7 African countries. Worked in Liberia, we've worked in Sierra Leone, we've worked in Ghana, we've worked in Senegal, just all over, Liberia. I've seen nobody was doing a governance communication, dedicated governance communication company at the time. Nobody was doing an awards to speak to young people at the time. People have said that, and it is true. And it's not that we invented the genre, but we said the future was in 2020. The OGs of podcasting were already there. I said what I said and others. But in terms of, you can see the explosion after Chude was launched. In terms of now people began to do interview formats from 2020. But I didn't do interviewing because it was cool or because there was any pathway to making money. There were no models on YouTube of, interview podcasts that were blowing up or going viral the way we eventually did. I did it because interviewing is my skill. And I wanted to do it. And I believed in what I was doing. And I was ready to do the work. And I was ready to stick with the work. It took us 1 year before we started seeing any growth on YouTube. It took us 1 year before we began to make any money. When we began to make money, it wasn't the way other people were making money. We didn't get any major brand sponsorships. I don't influence. We made money by setting up paid products, by putting our products on Apple Premium and putting our products on Vimeo. Selar wasn't yet here at the time, and eventually putting our products on Selar, and people began to pay for our products. Right now, last year, like I announced, we achieved our goals for the website. We launched our own streaming platform with Chude.com. Again, there's nobody doing any such thing. Like we would say, for a single person's content, to have a website where people come and pay for one person's content. Nobody else is doing that. But I don't care. It doesn't matter. Later somebody said, what you're building is a sovereign creator economy where you own all the assets, where you own all the data, where you own all the platforms. I didn't even know there was such a concept. I just did what seemed natural to me. Didn't pay attention to what anybody else was saying. In the digital space, the same thing I did when it was not the digital space. It's the same thing I'm doing in the digital space. So the principles are the same. And I've always had an African vision. I've always wanted to influence Africa. So even with this new mission, I said to myself, we are going African. But I said to myself, there's no need to rush. I said, when it's 2025, 2026, from 2021, we said, that's when we're going to go to Africa. And we had those plans. And we're doing that. And no matter what temptation came, I'd learned to say no. But other people are doing it. They will do it before you. Doesn't matter. First doesn't mean best. First doesn't even mean last. But this year, I went across Africa. First, I was in Kenya, I was in South Africa, and people were, this is with Chude, and we've only interviewed a few numbers of non-Nigerian celebrities on the show deliberately. And people were walking up to me in the street as I was doing the documentary, People were walking to me in the hotel at the airport to talk about Chude without a deliberate strategy to even go into Africa. Just by staying in my corner and doing the best that I can and just going at it and improving little by little, improving the production quality, improving the wardrobe choices, improving the editing quality, improving the promos quality, listening to my audience, So even though I'm not on social media personally, I make sure that I see what are my audience saying, what is their feedback, what do they like, what do they like, because I'm serving that market. Not paying attention to what other people are doing as much as I can, just doing my thing has helped me build what some people will call success. has helped me build what I'm proud of, has helped many creators build things that are changing industries, communities, all of that. By just following age-old principles of doing what I'm great at, what we are great at, of believing deeply in what we are doing, believing deeply in it, not just wanting to trend, not just wanting to make money, even though making money, like I said, is a great thing, not just wanting to show people, just focused on what do we want to do? How do we want to show up in the world? What do we truly enjoy doing? Despite what other people are doing, despite what the trends are, despite anything, despite anything. You see, one of the advantages of doing this, let me tell you, is I'm always joking with my partner that, do I say no to this economy? Because no matter what's happening with currencies, with all of that, you see, first of all, the bulk of our subscriptions on Chude.com come in dollars. Yeah, so it insulates us from the economy. No matter how bad the economy is, I can trust my subscribers. Because first of all, they are from across the world. But that was only possible because I built a unique business. Again, only possible because I didn't look at what was trending in the Nigerian economy for doing that. I just thought, what will do best for what me, Chude, what will be in the Chude thing? What do we want to do? And that helps us build a moat, a competitive advantage. That helps insulate us from the trends of the economy. That helps insulate us from YouTube. That's why, as I've said, I get annoyed at what YouTube forces creators to do. When you want to talk about, real life issues like divorce and sex and rape. These are real things people are dealing with. And you have to change the word from A to R, use X instead of E, and all of those things. We are able to avoid those things because of the platform we've built. We're able to insulate ourselves from being affected by what can affect other people because we just followed our own voice. This is not to do that. It is possible to do that. And it's not just possible to do that. A lot of creators are doing that. A lot. The ones that have lasted a decade, that's all they did. That's all they did. And perhaps you just want to succeed for 1 or 2 years. So good, chase trends. And that's fine. But if you want to create a digital business that lasts, that continues, like we've done with Red Media, like I want to do with Joy Inc. and with Chude, that lasts, even when the founders had left, it has to start not from what the market is saying, it has to start from what you want to do, what you believe in. So that belief is going to sustain you when everything else is falling apart. When everything else is falling apart, when there is no money, when there is no income, when there is no investment, when you stop getting comments on social media, when your YouTube numbers fall and surprise, when it shocks you, when things happen that you didn't expect, when the people who are loving your content temporarily move away, what will keep you going is that this thing I'm doing, I didn't do it because of them. I did it because of me. I did it because I want to do it. I did it because it excites me, because I believe in it. I did it because this comes from my core. And I have the discipline, the courage, the sense, the character to keep doing this. If you can find that, if you can stay with that, if you can innovate and improve from that place, whether your vision is Nigerian or African, whatever the platform is, TikTok today, Snapchat tomorrow, AI next tomorrow, you will find yourself very soon getting that dream, that vision, that success that you desire. And that's the message I thought I wanted to share to young creators who are trying to build a digital business that they can be proud of. Just something that occurred to me. I was interviewing somebody yesterday Vector, the Viper, the rapper, 2 days ago. And he was saying, be careful so you don't mistakenly blow in what you are not proud of. It reminds me of what Tayo I know, one of the greatest creators I think this space has seen in this generation. He said, be careful when you are trying to blow as a YouTuber. Because, and he's inspired me greatly, Tayo, because you don't want to do something that thing now blows, and that's not the thing you want to do. Because you're not going to enjoy the journey. You're not going to enjoy the journey. Be careful to do things and stick with things so that when they succeed, you'll be proud of yourself. You'll enjoy the journey and be able to sustain that journey through the most difficult times. Thank you so much for listening to me. I like to keep to time. And I'm going to hand over to the Selar team if people have any questions. Hello, Selar team. When you have the urge to change an environment and the temptation's not too strong, but changing is best, how do you navigate that? That's a very good question, Elizabeth. The answer to that, I'm trying to simplify it. You have to have built your character and courage before that time comes. You have to have built. And the way to do that is, the way to build courage is to have courage in small, small things. So building your career, learn to do what you know to be right that other people don't agree with. Learn to know what you know to be right that other people don't agree with. And as you learn to know what to be right, as you do that, in those small, small things, and then you prove yourself right. You begin to build courage. So that when a big decision like this comes, even if people tell you you've built your own, in what Stephen Covey calls internal security, you've built your own internal security to know that I know this is the right decision. So that courage will not come at that time. You have to have built it. It will become organic, for you to say, I've heard your advice, but this is what I'm going to do, because you've built a system of courage. You've learned every day in small, small things how to say yes to yourself and say no to the opinions of others. Now, it doesn't mean you should disregard people's feedback. I always say, take all data that you receive, but don't let the data overpower your own spirit, your own decision, your own gut, because your gut is also important data. Your gut often comes from the experiences you've had. So take all of that. I always say, let people's feedback debate with your gut. Allow it without fear. Let it debate. Take all the information. Let people say no. Let them debate and see which argument is stronger. And if your argument for what you want to do is stronger, for changing your environment is stronger, then the courage you build for making small, small decisions will give you the organic courage to make that big decision. So start now. Start from whatever you're doing. Start building courage. Start saying yes to yourself. Start building your brands. Start tweaking your content. Start trying what other people haven't tried. Sometimes you will fail, but you see, everybody fails. The cowardly fail, the brave fail. So you might as well just do it. And when those big decisions to change or not to change come, you would have built the internal fortitude to do it without losing your heart to do it. I hope that helps.